Hey everybody, it's Mike History 2. I'll be talking about top 10 worst people in history again. And so today we're going to do number 4. So, number 4 is Dorgon, and most of you probably never heard of him. And that's good. As I said in my last video, that means you can get to learn about a new person. So, Dorgon was born on November 7th, 1612 to Nurhaci, the chief of the Jiangsu, the Jiangchu Jurchens, and his wife, Lady Abahai. During his half-brother Tiansong Han's reign, Dorgon participated in many military campaigns, including the conquest of Mongolia and Korea. He fought against the Chahar Mongols in 1628 and 1635. After Tiansong Han died in 1643, Dorgon became involved in a power struggle with Tiansong Han's eldest son, Haoko, over the succession to the throne. The conflict was resolved with a compromise. Both backed out, and Tiansong Han's ninth son, Fu Lin, ascended the throne as the Shunzhi Emperor. Since the Shunzhi Emperor was only 6 years old, Dorgon was appointed regent and became basically the actual ruler. It was rumored that Dorgon had an affair with the Shunzhi Emperor's mother, Empress Dowager Xiao Chuang, and even secretly married her. But there are also people who don't believe this. On February 17, 1644, Jir Galang, who was a capable military leader but appeared uninterested in managing state affairs, basically gave up control of all his official duties to Dorgon. After an alleged plot by Haoko to undermine the regency was exposed on May 6 of that year, Haoko was stripped of his princely titles and his co-conspirators were executed. Dorgon soon replaced Haoko's supporters with his own, thus gaining more power. By early June 1644, he was in firm control of the Qing government and its military. In early 1644, just as Dorgon and his advisors were pondering how to attack China, peasant rebellions were dangerously approaching Beijing. On April 24th of that year, rebel forces led by Li Tzucheng breached the walls of the Chinese capital. The last Chinese emperor, the Chongzhen Emperor, hung himself at a hill behind the Forbidden City. Hearing the news, Dorgon's Chinese advisors, Hong Chengchu and Fan Wencheng, urged the prince to seize this opportunity to present themselves as avengers of the fallen China and claim the mandate of heaven for the Qing Empire. The last obstacle between Dorgon and Beijing was Wu Sangui, a former Chinese general guarding the Shanhai Pass at the eastern end of the wall. Wu Sangui was caught between the Qing army and Li Tzucheng's forces. He requested Dorgon's help in crushing the rebels and restoring China. When Dorgon asked Wu Sangui to work for the Qing Empire instead, Wu had little choice but to accept. Aided by Wu Sangui's elite soldiers, who fought the rebel army for hours before Dorgon finally just chose to intervene with his cavalry, the Qing army won a decisive victory against Li Tzucheng at the Battle of Shanhai Pass on May 27th. Li Tzucheng and his defeated troops eluded Beijing for several days until they left the capital on June 4th with all the wealth they could carry. After 6 weeks of mistreatment at the hands of rebel troops, the residents of Beijing sent a party of elders and officials to greet their liberators on June 5th. They were startled when, instead of meeting Wu Sangui and the Chinese heir, they saw Dorgon, a horse-riding Qing with the front half of his head shaved, present himself as the Prince Regent. In the midst of this upheaval, Dorgon installed himself as Prince Regent in the Wu Ying Palace, the only building that remained more or less intact after Li Tzucheng had set fire to the Forbidden City on June 3rd. Qing troops were ordered not to loot, and their discipline made the transition to Qing rule smoother. Yet at the same time, as he claimed to have come to avenge China, Dorgon ordered that all claimants to the Chinese throne should be executed along with their supporters. On June 7th, just 2 days after entering the city, Dorgon issued special proclamations to officials around the capital, assuring them that if the local population surrendered, the officials would be allowed to stay at their posts. Besides, all the men had to shave the front half of their heads and wear the rest of the hair in queues. He had to repeal this command 3 weeks later after several peasant rebellions erupted around Beijing, threatening Chinese control over the capital. Dorgon greeted the Shunzhi Emperor at the gates of Beijing on October 19, 1644. On October 30th, the 6-year-old monarch performed sacrifices to heaven and earth at the altar of heaven. A formal ritual of enthronement for the Shunzhi Emperor was held on November 8th, during which the young emperor compared Dorgon's achievements to those of the Duke of Chu, a revered regent of the Chu dynasty. After this, he was crowned the Emperor of China, transforming the Qing Empire into China. During the ceremony, Dorgon's official title was raised from Prince Regent to Uncle and Prince Regent, in which the Qing term for uncle represented a rank higher than that of imperial priest. What am I saying? Imperial prince. 3 days later, Dorgon's co-regent, Jir Galang, was demoted from Prince Regent to Assistant Uncle Prince Regent. In June 1645, Dorgon eventually decreed that all official documents should refer to him as Imperial Uncle Prince Regent, leaving him one step short of claiming the throne for himself. Man, I'm really drunk today. Dorgon gave a Manchu woman as a wife to the Han official Feng Chuan, who had defected from China to the Qing Empire. The Manchu queue hairstyle was willingly adopted by Feng Chuan before it was enforced on the Han population, and Fang learned Manchu. To promote ethnic harmony, a 1648 decree from the Shunzhi Emperor allowed Han men to marry Manchu women with the permission of the Board of Revenue. In 1646, Dorgon ordered that the imperial civil service examinations for selecting officials be reinstated. And spoiler alert, 200 years later that would cause the Taiping Rebellion. But if you want to know more about that, watch my last video. From then on, examinations were held every 3 years as under the previous dynasty. In the very first imperial examination held under Qing rule in 1646, candidates, most of whom were northern Chinese, were asked how the Manchus and Han could work together for a common purpose. Under the Shunzhi Emperor's reign, the average number of graduates of the examination procession was the highest of the Qing dynasty, continuing until 1660 when lower quotas were established. Under the reign of Dorgon, the Qing subdued almost all of China and the southern Ming Empire, who declared independence from the new Qing-controlled China. After repressing anti-Chinese revolts at Hopei and Shantung in the summer and fall of 1644, Dorgon sent armies to root out Li Zucheng from Xi'an, where Li had re-established his headquarters after fleeing Beijing in early June 1644. Under the pressure of Chinese army, Li was forced to leave Xi'an in February 1645. He was killed either by his own hand or by a peasant group that had organized for self-defense during this time of rampant banditry in September 1645 after fleeing through several provinces. From newly captured Xi'an in early April 1645, the Chinese forces mounted a campaign against the region of Jiangnan, south of the lower Yangtze River, where in June 1644 a Ming prince, Zhu Yujian, had declared the southern Ming Empire's independence from China. Factional bickering and numerous defections prevented the southern Ming from mounting an effective resistance. Several Chinese armies swept south, taking Suchu north of the Huai River in early May 1645, and soon converging on Yangzhou, the main city on the southern Ming's northern line of defense. Bravely defended by Shi Kefa, who refused to surrender, Yangzhou fell to Chinese artillery on May 20th after a one-week siege. Dorgon's brother, Dodo, Prince Yu, then ordered the slaughter of Yangzhou's entire population. As intended, this massacre terrorized other Jiangnan cities into surrendering to China. Indeed, Nanqing surrendered without a fight on June 16th after its last defenders made Dodo, Prince Yu, promise he would not harm the population. The Chinese forces soon captured the southern Ming Emperor and seized Jiangnan's main cities, including Suchu and Hongqiu. By early July 1645, the frontier between China and the southern Ming Empire had been pushed south to the Chentang River. On July 21, 1645, after Jiangnan had been pacified, Dorgon issued an edict ordering all Han men to shave the front half of their heads and wear the rest of their hair in queues identical to those of the Manchus. And for those who didn't do so, they were killed. This policy of symbolic submission helped the Manchus distinguish friend from foe. For Han officials and literati, however, the new hairstyle was shameful and demeaning, whereas for common people, cutting their hair was basically the same as losing their manliness. Because the united Han of all social backgrounds into resistance against Chinese rule, the hair-cutting command greatly slowed down the Qing conquest. The defined population of Jiading and Songjiang was massacred by Chinese general Li Chengdong, respectively, on August 24th and September 22nd. Jiangyin was also held out against about 10,000 Chinese troops for 83 days. When the city walls were finally breached on October 9, 1645, the Chinese army led by defector Liu Langzuo massacred the entire population, killing between 74 and 100,000 people. These massacres ended armed resistance against China in the lower Yangtze. A few committed loyalists became hermits, hoping that for lack of military success, the withdrawal from the world would at least symbolize their continued defiance against foreign rule. After the fall of Nanqing, two more members of the Ming dynasty created new southern Ming regimes. One centered in Fujian around Zhu Yujian, a ninth-generation descendant of the Hongwu Emperor, the Ming dynasty's founder, and one in Zhejiang around Chu Yihai, Prince of Lu. But the two loyalist groups failed to cooperate, making their chances of success even lower than they already were. In 1646, a new southern campaign led by Bolo, Prince Duanzhong, sent Chu Yihai's court into disarray and proceeded to attack the Zhu Yujian regime in Fujian. Zhu Yujian was caught and executed in Tingzhou on October 6th. His adoptive son, Guo Xingye, fled to the island of Taiwan with his fleet. Finally, in November, the remaining centers of southern Ming resistance in Qingxi province fell to the Qing. In late 1646, two more southern Ming monarchs emerged in the southern province of Guangzhou, Chu Yue and Chu Yulang. The two southern Ming regimes fought each other until January 20th, 1647, when a small Chinese force led by Li Chengdong captured Guangzhou, killed Chu Yue, and sent Chu Yulang fleeing to Nanning in Guangxi. And if you have no idea what I said, neither do I. In May 1648, however, Li mutinied against China, and the rebellion of another former Ming general in Shaanxi at the same time helped Chu Yulang to retake most of southern China. This resurgence of southern Ming hopes was short-lived. New Chinese armies managed to reconquer Hubei, Honan, Jiangxi, and Guangdong in 1649 and 1650. Chu Yulang had to flee again. Finally, on November 24th, 1650, Chinese forces led by Xiang Kexi captured Guangzhou and massacred the city's population, killing as many as 70,000 people. Meanwhile, in October 1646, Chinese armies led by Hao Ko reached Sichuan, where their mission was to destroy the regime of bandit chief Chang Xianchong. Chang was killed in a battle against Chinese forces near Sichong in central Sichuan on February 1st, 1647. Also late in 1646, but further north, forces assembled by Muslim leader Milai Yin revolted against Chinese rule in Kanchu. He was soon joined by another Muslim named Ding Wotong. Proclaiming that they wanted to restore the Ming, they occupied a number of towns in Kansu, including the provincial capital Lanzhou. Both Milai Yin and Ding Wotong were captured and killed by Meng Qiaofang in 1648, and by 1650 the Muslim rebels had been crushed in campaigns that inflicted heavy casualties. Dorgon finally died on December 31st, 1650, during a hunting trip in Karahoton, now modern Chengde and Hopei, after sustaining injuries. However, the suspicion that Dorgon was actually murdered by his political enemies while being away from the heavy protection inside the Forbidden City never disappeared. Dorgon had 25 years of experience of horse riding, managed to survive on horseback, numerous battles with the Koreans, Mongols, Chinese rebels, as well as regular Chinese armies. The official Chinese history claim that he injured his leg while riding on his horse, and that the injuries were so severe that he could not survive the trip back to the Forbidden City, despite the presence of doctors. And this story is not necessarily reliable. In the dry winter of northern China, the ground is not wet, or else it would have easily caused horses to trip. Another cause for suspicion is that Dorgon's corpse was exhumed, whipped, and then burned in the purge ordered by Emperor Shunzhi. A likely method camouflaged as the ultimate punishment for his alleged plot to take over the throne, in order to remove all evidence that Dorgon was murdered. His death was also took place when Emperor Shunzhi was about 13, an appropriate age for removing the regents. That is to say, if Dorgon had died any earlier, Shunzhi would still need a regent to supervise the empire on his behalf. In total, Dorgon's war against southern Ming and his brutal consolidation of rule in China, including his many massacre of cities, killed around 25 million people, which is why he's on this list. If you enjoyed that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you next time.